And I'm a veteran. I did 30 years in the Air Force, 10 enlisted and 20 commissioned officer. I've been in the corporate world for just slightly over 13 years, and I never had any intentions of starting my own business. Just was never anything crossed my mind. I kind of followed the standard, retired from the military, the contractors were lined up while I was at the Pentagon. I'll jump into one of those high-paying jobs, which is what I did. What I didn't realize was about 6.5 years into the company that I was working for, starting to do cutbacks. The economy was tightening up, and personnel was the quickest and easiest way to save money immediately. So vice president came in one afternoon about 1 o'clock, called us all into the lobby and said, "Stop doing what you're doing. This division's dissolved effective immediately." I had 39 employees that worked for me, and about 3/4 of them went into panic mode when they heard that, because most of them were younger. I had military retirement, I have disability. Go ahead and lay me off. I'll take a little vacation. You know, it wasn't a crisis for me, but it was for many of the people that worked for me. And so I spent my 5 weeks of severance time working with them on refining their resumes, practicing interviews, doing job search and so forth, because I also have a background in HR, and my second master's was in HR. So I taught them how to trick the system, how to get your resume up in front of other folks and so forth. Still had no intentions of ever starting a business of my own. When they laid us off, I thought, well, I can do, like my wife said, 2 months into my unemployment and job searching, helped all 39 people get a job before their severance ended. Can you do something to get yourself a job with that? So that's when I started to do resume writing for clients. And I was also simultaneously working, and still do, pro bono in working with the homeless shelters and emergency assistance in teaching seminars and so forth on the same processes: how to write an effective resume that somebody can read in 30 seconds or less, how to do a job interview, what to say, what not to say, and how to do a job search and keep your resume on the top of the pile, so to speak, because even though everything's electronic, it's basically like the old file boxes we used when I was a one-striper in the Air Force, you know, where things would come in and they pile on top and pile on top and pile on top. The same thing happens electronically with resumes. And so I taught folks from my HR background how to fool the system into thinking your resume is brand new every week. So that's part of the process that I did with them. The folks I've been doing the homeless shelter and emergency assistance now for about 8 years, and everybody that I've had come through my seminars and so forth that did what I advised them to do, and I didn't do the work for them. I taught them how to do it and how to be self-sufficient. Every one of them got interviews and got jobs, and some of those folks have been out of work for 3-4 years, some even more so. And it was even more difficult, I found, for myself and others, that age discrimination was a big factor out there. So I still only intended to do this till I got another job. And although the more I was out of work, the less enthused I was about going back and working for somebody else, because it was a lot of fun. I usually met my clients in coffee shops and everything, which is a great environment to work in, you know, and I could wear jeans to work every day. So as my clientele started to build for my paying clients, and so I thought, you know, I need to keep this going regardless of what I do. I'll tell you some things that I did wrong. And this was one of the things that Amanda and I talked to. In fact, she educated me early on one of the big things I did wrong was that I put LLC on my job title, Right Path Resumes and Consulting, but I didn't do the paperwork and such to make it an LLC. And she shared a story with me that shook me up pretty good, that said, you better do this, because I was under the impression that most people are good, and most people are honest, and they wouldn't dare try to take advantage or make money. I was wrong about that. I do have a legitimate LLC now. I worked out of my home because there was really zero investment here I live in Woodbridge. My clients range from Florida to Washington State to this whole region because of the electronic and the social media that's out there. I will tell you, I wasn't socialized with social media. I still don't like it. My IT son, who's in the Coast Guard, just got about 20 awards yesterday, told me that I'm a dinosaur, so I let him do my social media stuff for me. I found the strongest tool that I've had has been word of mouth. As I built clientele, they told others. And let's face it, when we're looking at products, we're looking at services and so forth, who are we going to listen to? Joe Boltersdorf, who's saying, hey, my product, my services are great, or a friend who says, hey, did a resume for me and I was really impressed with that. So never rule that out. That's been my most powerful tool in getting clients. I mean, I've had people call me from, I had a person call me from Miami, an engineer, and say, hey, I was referred to you by a friend. I'm like, you know, I really don't get in that neighborhood much. How did that happen? He said, oh, I have a friend in Virginia, and you did his resume, and he told me about it. So I use the second most powerful tool that I've found in my business arena anyway has been email. Getting email addresses for folks, getting email referrals, and then when folks do testimonials for me for my website, I ask them, you know, I tell them, if you refer a person to me, then I'll give that person a discount. So that's another incentive to draw clientele, depending on what your business is and so forth. I never thought exclusively between profit and nonprofit. I just looked at it as doing something that I like, and it crosses over both of those venues. I can do resume writing and seminars and so forth in the nonprofit arena and be successful, and I can also do the profit side of it and make money with it. So I haven't, at least in my business experience, I haven't had a need to separate the two or let one of those go. So I don't intend to. It may not work for some of the businesses that you want to go into. These two folks are a lot smarter than I am, and they could tell you, you know, that that's probably going to be only in the for-profit arena or whatever. But even if your career, job, business, and so forth is for-profit, it doesn't mean that you can't get involved and do other things for the community. You know, you need to catch up with the times, like Bob was saying, 1960s resume style. Today, I've read a lot of stuff even in the last couple of months where they say corporations will spend about 6 seconds to read a resume. I don't think that's realistic. 30 seconds is realistic. And so they don't want to see your life story. They don't want to see objectives, job objectives. That went out probably in the 60s, maybe in the 70s. And some of the other things that I've seen in folks' resumes. So usually I bleed all over them, but I don't plug and play. So every single one is unique. And understand, especially as we transition out of the military, I mean, we have our own language, really, that we all understand. Joint Staff has its own language aside from our respective service ones. I got to work in Joint Staff, worked for the Secretary of Defense, and did joint requirements for Homeland Security, Force Protection, so forth. So I could speak a number of military and federal government languages and acronyms and so forth. But you have to assume that the recruiter that's looking at the resume that you've written just graduated from college or high school, doesn't even understand the title of the job that the hiring manager has given to him or her. And so your resume needs to speak to that. So that's another key discriminator that I use, is I have all of my clients, and even the folks that are in my emergency assistance and homeless shelter classes, give me a job that you want to apply for, that you feel you're qualified for, and I map the resume to that job. I think last count was 48 resumes. They're not totally different, but every single one of them is mapped to a very specific position that I was applying for or trying to go after. Because if that recruiter that doesn't see, you know, we're asking for this person to have these specific things, if they don't see those words, many times they'll put your resume aside. So I do the mapping for the individuals. I take the job requisitions and I integrate that language into their respective resume. Well, it's impossible to have a template that you just do a plug and play. But I don't believe that I know everything, so I'm always in a learning process with my business to make sure that I'm on the cutting edge of what I offer my clients, because their success is my success, and when they succeed, they tell other people about it.